Hello and welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Amanda Bowen. We'll go ahead and get started looking at the hazardous weather because there is a lot to cover today. We have a blizzard warning out for the Chukchi Sea coast. That's through 6 p.m. on Thursday. For that area, we're expecting wind gusts up to 45 miles an hour, cause blowing snow as well as drifting snow, which is going to cause whiteout conditions and definitely some difficulty in traveling with those whiteout conditions. So make sure that you continue to be aware in that area of the possibility for those whiteout conditions, and probably not a good time to travel along the Chukchi Sea coast. We also have out right now a wind advisory for the eastern Alaska range, especially through the passes. We're expecting wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour, and that is in effect through 6 a.m. on Thursday. So driving may be difficult through the eastern Alaska range passes, especially for high-profile vehicles. And for the northern part of the state, we do have a winter weather advisory in effect for the summits along Dalton and Steese highways. That is in effect from 3 p.m. Thursday to 12 p.m. on Friday. So it doesn't start until Thursday afternoon and goes all the way until noon on Friday. Expecting wind gusts with blowing snow, reducing visibility along those highways, along those summits, along the Dalton and Steese highways. So make sure you take that into account if you have any plans to be traveling on the Dalton and Steese highways Thursday and Friday. Taking a look at the southern part of the state, we have a winter weather advisory going into effect at 6 a.m. on Thursday through 6 p.m. on Thursday. So during the day hours on Thursday for Portage Valley and Turnagain Pass. That's going to be for new snow with 4 to 8 inches expected at Portage Valley and up to 15 inches at Turnagain Pass. In addition to the snow, some breezy winds are also expected with gusts up to 45 miles per hour. And the combination of that snow and the wind is going to make visibility very low and travel difficult through those areas. Again, that's Portage Valley and Turnagain Pass areas. Related, we have a blizzard warning in effect for the Thompson Pass area. That is for 9 a.m. Thursday through 6 a.m. on Friday. Blizzard warning again at Thompson Pass, expecting new snow as well as blowing snow with strong winds there as well. So whiteout conditions at times at Thompson Pass for Thursday and Thursday night. Taking a look at the Panhandle, we have a winter storm warning in effect for the Haines Highway area, the Haines Highway above Haines itself. That is going to be for new snow up to 12 inches, and that winter storm warning is in effect from 9 a.m. on Thursday to 9 a.m. on Friday. The Skagway area, the Klondike Highway area above Skagway, is also looking at snow. We have a winter weather advisory in effect for the Klondike Highway, also 9 a.m. Thursday to 9 a.m. on Friday, with snow amounts expected to be 6 to 10 inches for the Klondike Highway during that time period. And we also have high wind warnings in effect for the Thursday time period, 9 a.m. Thursday to 9 p.m. Thursday, for the Sitka, Craig, Klawock, and Port Alexander areas, expecting wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour, which may down trees and impact power lines, potentially causing some power outages in the area. So make sure you're preparing for those high winds in those communities. As we take a look at what's causing all of this weather, we can see on our satellite imagery there's quite a shield of clouds moving north into the Gulf of Alaska, and that is associated with our next system that's going to be bringing all of that weather to the Gulf Coast and the Panhandle. We can also see some clouds over the northwestern portion of the state, and that is associated with a trough that's bringing those increased winds along the Chukchi Sea coast and warranting that blizzard warning up there. So if we take a look at our surface chart for today, we can see that trough along the west coast and especially up along the Chukchi Sea coast that is bringing those increased winds. Elsewhere for today, we have mostly snow showers for the southern portion of the state as well as the Panhandle. But in general, we're waiting for that next system to come in and bring us the rest of this weather. So as we look into tonight, we start to see that system moving northward with the frontal system coming into the Gulf and starting to bring some of that precipitation, but we won't see most of it until starting on Thursday, with that low expected to be about 967 millibars centered just south of Kodiak Island by Thursday afternoon, so bringing plenty of precipitation to the Gulf area. And then as we head into Friday, that precipitation will continue with a trough over much of the state, enhancing that precipitation. And we can even see our next system coming up a little bit further west, coming up to the south side of the Alaska Peninsula by Friday afternoon. Taking a look at our temperature forecast for Thursday morning, we've got 30s, even some upper 30s in the Panhandle, with 38 degrees at Sitka, 20s for much of the rest of the Gulf Coast, with 29 at Seward and 21 at Kenai. For Thursday morning across the northern side of the state, looks like negative teens for the North Slope with 16 at Deadhorse, 12 at AKwx, and warmer across the interior. Still a cold -6 at Fairbanks, but some positive temperatures on the west coast with 6 degrees at Nome. Shifting southwest for the state, we're looking at those single digits mostly along the west coast with 9 degrees at Bethel, but warming for the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutians with 32 there at Kodiak. High temperatures Thursday afternoon, warming into the 40s for the Panhandle with 46 there at Ketchikan. Still in the 30s for much of the South Central and Alaska Peninsula area, 28 at Anchorage, 28 at Talkeetna, looks like 30 at Cordova for Thursday afternoon. And along the north side of the state, not a whole lot of warming for the North Slope, still looking at the negative teens even for highs on Thursday afternoon, but we will see more warming across the interior with 5 degrees at Fairbanks, looks like 13 there at the Denali National Park entrance, and even a few degrees warmer along the west coast, 17 for Thursday afternoon at Nome. And moving down to the southwest side of the state, we're looking at teens, looks like 14 at Bethel, but warming into the 30s for much of the Aleutians, with looks like about 29 degrees there at Unalaska. Friday morning, lows Friday morning, it's even warmer for the low temperatures in the Panhandle on Friday morning. Temperatures almost struggling to get down below 40 degrees. So 38 there at Ketchikan, 35 for Juneau, but cooler as we get across the rest of the Gulf Coast with 29 there at Kenai and 18 at Iliamna on Friday morning. Still looking like the negative teens for the North Slope, but a little bit warmer Friday morning than Thursday morning for the interior. 2 degrees at Fairbanks. Still in the teens for the West Coast with 20s for the Aleutians. Friday afternoon, even warmer for the Panhandle, 45, 46 degrees for the Southern Panhandle. Looks like temperatures around 30 to about 40 with 41 at Homer and 39 at Kodiak. A little bit warmer finally for the North Slope Friday afternoon with temperatures in the negative single digits and teens across much of the interior, with teens for the southwest inland portions of the state as well, and 30s for the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutians.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to a look at your aviation forecast, where Thursday morning we're expecting IFR conditions in Bristol Bay, as well as the Yukon Flats and portions of the North Slope. Also some IFR conditions coming up into the Northern Gulf if you have plans to fly in that area. For Thursday afternoon, we'll see those IFR conditions in the Northern Gulf spread onto most of the coastline along the immediate Gulf, as well as to most of the Northern Panhandle and up into portions of the Wrangell-St. Elias Mountains. Those IFR conditions in Bristol Bay are also going to be spreading back into the Bering Sea to the Pribilofs on Thursday afternoon. For Friday morning, still IFR conditions for most of the Gulf Coast, including the Panhandle, the entirety of the Panhandle this time, as well as some IFR conditions in the Bering Sea up through St. Matthew Island. IFR conditions also returning to the North Slope from about AKwx east to Deadhorse. And for Friday afternoon, those IFR conditions along North Slope actually spreading further east all the way to the Canadian border, and IFR conditions continuing along the northern Gulf Coast from east of Prince William Sound all the way down through the higher terrain of the Panhandle. IFR conditions moving up into the Alaska Peninsula and remaining in the northeastern Bering from about Bristol Bay, again back up through about St. Matthew Island. Pass conditions on Thursday, AKwx Pass looking like MVFR during the day on Thursday. Adigan Pass VFR though on Thursday. Lake Clark and Merrill Passes both MVFR conditions on Thursday. Rainy Pass starting the day at MVFR but improving to VFR Thursday afternoon. Same story at Windy Pass, MVFR in the morning with VFR in the afternoon. And Isabel Pass starting at MVFR and improving to VFR on Thursday afternoon. Mentasta Pass going the other way, VFR Thursday morning, but deteriorating to MVFR on Thursday afternoon. Tanita Pass starting the day at MVFR and improving to VFR. Portage Pass looking like MVFR all day on Thursday, and significant changes at Chilkoot and White Passes, which are expected to start the day out Thursday at VFR and deteriorate quickly to IFR Thursday afternoon. Freezing levels on Thursday, still cold air in place across the entire state, but we are seeing a little bit of that relatively warmer air starting to push up into just the southern Panhandle with 2,000-foot freezing level across the southwesternmost portion of the Panhandle. For icing on Thursday, quite a lot of isolated moderate icing, mostly around the coastal and immediate inland areas. So for the Panhandle, between about 4,000 and 9,000 feet, isolated moderate icing. For south central and much of the southwest portion of the state, including the Aleutians, between about 3,000 and 9,000 feet. And for the west coast, above 1,000 feet and below 9,000 feet. Our jet stream winds, the jet is arcing, coming up the eastern side of the Gulf and then arcing across western Canada. So strongest winds over the Alaska area for the jet, 105 to about 120 knots over the eastern Gulf, and then peaking again about 115 to 140 knots across the Canadian border with Alaska. Looking at 9,000-foot winds, we definitely have our strongest winds over the Panhandle, where we're looking at 75 to 80 knots out of almost the due south for much of the Panhandle. Some of that wind stretching across the Gulf Coast to the Kenai Peninsula with about 60 knots out of the southeast there. And finally, at 3,000 feet, we have our strongest winds in the same area, arcing all the way across the Gulf from the Panhandle, 75 to almost 90 knots south of the Panhandle. That's going to be winds out of the south and southeast, to 50 to 65 knots out of the east and southeast, stretching all the way from about Kodiak Island up through about Yakutat on Thursday. And finally, for our turbulence on Thursday, a number of areas of turbulence with those strongest winds that we saw reflected near the Gulf Coast. We will see an area of potential for isolated severe turbulence with those strongest winds. So that's going to be stretching all the way from the coastal Panhandle across the Gulf Coast through Prince William Sound, across the Kenai Peninsula, and stretching down to about Kodiak. For the Panhandle area, that's going to be below 6,000 feet, and then for South Central and the Kodiak below about 5,000 feet. Also an area along just north of the Alaska Range over Fairbanks of considerable moderate turbulence below about 8,000 feet.
Technology. It's the rhythm of our everyday life. We're more dependent on satellite and communication systems than at any other time in history. Disruptions can affect our economy and even our safety. To prepare for the effects of such events and minimize impacts, we need to look outside our atmosphere, some 93 million miles away, at a star we call the Sun. It's our main energy source. It warms the earth and grows our food. While the sun and the space between may seem pleasant from our perspective, it's anything but peaceful. At its surface exists a chaotic state of eruptions and radiation. And unlike Vegas, what happens at the sun doesn't stay at the sun.
Space weather is essentially emissions from the sun, radiation, magnetic field that erupts from the solar surface, pumped out into space, sometimes right towards Earth. When it impacts the Earth, it impacts our technology. That's what we call space weather.
These solar events and their effects at Earth can disrupt systems we take for granted. From causing blackouts to the power grid, to delaying offshore drilling operations due to inaccurate GPS data. Interference with communication systems can force air traffic to reroute and impact rescue response and coordination. Outside our atmosphere, solar radiation can harm astronauts and the systems they depend on. The good news is that these eruptions can be detected early. Forecasters at the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center in Boulder, Colorado, have their eyes on the sun at all times.
The Space Weather Prediction Center is part of the National Weather Service and is very much like a normal weather forecast office. We're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're looking at data, we're looking at imagery, we're looking at model outputs. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches of imminent activity to our customers so they can take action.
In many ways, forecasting space weather is a lot like forecasting hurricanes. Those who rely on space weather forecasts, like electric power grid managers, are informed early on and can begin taking protective action.
When we see an eruption on the sun, space weather forecasters will issue a watch. This is much like a hurricane watch. When a hurricane sits offshore of Miami, for example, perhaps 48 hours out, we too can see way in advance that something may be coming towards the Earth.
As the storm moves toward us, it hits a monitoring spacecraft orbiting 1 million miles away from Earth.
It's kind of our buoy sitting out there offshore, and that hurricane about 30, 45 minutes before it makes landfall, we'll get the measurements from the buoy. That's what this spacecraft does for us. That big eruption that left the sun hits the spacecraft. Now we've got the measurements of exactly what's going to impact us here on Earth, and we issue the warnings to give the power grid a heads up that the storm is now imminent. An interesting element to this whole process is that when the forecasters issue the alert, the power grid receives the alert, takes the necessary actions to protect the grid, and the average citizen never knows anything ever happened.
The number of customers who rely on space weather information continues to grow. As our reliance on technology increases, so will our need for constant monitoring of the sun.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
GPS has changed society. Most people don't realize how remarkable and how many different applications there are.
The GPS has become an integral part, not just of our daily lives as far as cell phones and guidance for our cars and mapping, but the whole system in agriculture is really relying heavily on high accuracy GPS.
So they're using GPS to plant those seeds with centimeter accuracy. And then they can come behind it and irrigate and fertilize right where that seed is with that 1 centimeter accuracy.
The GPS creates a line for the operator that he can steer along, or you go to another level and the operator doesn't steer anymore and the tractor has an automatic steering system on it, much like a cruise control on a car, except for when I push the button, it doesn't drive a set speed. When I push a button, it stays on a predefined line.
You don't even need lights. You can do it at nighttime. You program your GPS and it's driving that tractor for you. So it's huge, and it's changing the way that the farmers farm the fields.
6 or 7 days out.
There's an interest in GPS applications from space weather side because when the sun is eruptive, it causes GPS to falter, and in some cases it doesn't work at all.
Productivity may suffer to a certain degree in that there's no way that I as a human being can steer as good 8 hours a day as a GPS system is going to do. It's going to be the same all day long. Some of the other application technologies, those are going to be gone. We're not going to have the ability to do good section control on sprayers and planters and fertilizer applicators without GPS.
We see a huge growing customer base in so many different industries, so many different sectors now relying on GPS and high precision GPS. They're all big customers for us.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, this is meteorologist Joel Curtis with your marine weather. Starting out with the sea ice edge, we're expecting north flow through next Monday with advances toward the south, and then a turnaround starting next Tuesday with southerly flow to move the ice edge farther north again. We got one report of the ice edge 10 nautical miles from St. Matthews, so it hasn't quite got there yet. Thursday's marine forecast, start now for southeast waters. Storm force up to 60 knots and seas up to 31 feet. All out of the east and the southeast. On the inside waters, 30 to 40 knots and up to 10 feet, especially down there at Clarence Strait. Friday's marine forecast, on the outside waters, 25 to 30 knots, southerlies, and seas up to 26 feet. There should be quite a lump staying out there on Friday. And then on the inside waters, 15 to 25 knots, and seas up to 6 feet. For the outside waters for South Central, storm force up to 55 knots and seas 28 feet. In Prince William Sound, northeasterlies 30, seas 6 feet, and storm force in Lower Cook Inlet up to 50 knots and seas up to 24 feet down by Augustine. And then on Friday, things laying down quite a bit, 15 to 25 knot southerlies on the outside, seas up to 21 feet with a big swell. In Prince William Sound, southeast 20, seas 4 feet, and Cook Inlet of variable wind directions, 10 to 20 knots, and seas up to 5 feet. For the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, storm force up to 50 knots both through Chillicothe Strait on the outside waters, seas up to 24 feet, and then on the Bering Sea side, 25 to 35 knots, seas up to 6 feet. And then for Kodiak Island waters, variable wind directions, all ranging widely from 10 all the way up to 25 knots, seas as high as 18 feet on the outside of Kodiak with a big swell. And then on the Bering Sea side, 10 to 15 knots and seas up to 6 feet. For the Aleutian Chain, northerlies, 25 knots, seas up to 9 feet on the Bering Sea side and up to 8 feet on the Pacific side. And then as we get into Friday, northwesterlies mainly, 15 to all the way up to 30 knots, seas up to 12 feet. And then on the Pacific side, 30 knots, seas up to 14 feet. For the West Coast, northerlies, 15 to 20 knots, seas up to 6 feet. And then on Friday, ramping up to 25 knots, seas up to 8 feet. For the Arctic slope, on Thursday, first of all, we've got easterlies along the Arctic Ocean there, 20, ranging up to 35 knots, all over the ice. And then as we get down to Cape Lisburne, 35 knots, decreasing to 15 knots as you get through the Bering Strait. And then on Friday, 25 knots along the North Slope, then ramping up to 30 to 40 knots as you get down to Wainwright and Point Hope, and then northerlies 25 knots through the Bering Strait. So recapping tonight's weather, major weather system moving into the Gulf, and another weather system skirting south of the Aleutians, snow showers all over the Bering Sea, and onshore flow with lots of snow and rain going onto the Gulf Coast and some of the central interior. On Thursday's weather, that major system, now 967 millibars near Sitkinak Island, lots of onshore flow, lots of surface pressure gradient for those storm force winds, and then out in the Bering, a fairly weak flow, but snow showers all over the place. And then on Friday, two more weather systems moving on up. So a 968 millibar low well south of Sand Point, lots of onshore flow for rain and snow as you get further inland, and then out in the Bering Sea, snow showers with a weak surface low, and another system south of Amchitka, 988 millibars. Well, that's our weather for marine weather for tonight, and thanks for tuning in.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.